Hey everyone.
Good morning and welcome back to Core 90. It's
Woo!
Wednesday.
Yeah, man, we're so excited about today in particular because we have a very, very special guest, also a dear friend who's come to join us today to talk a little bit about her crystal ball. She's going to predict the future with 100% accuracy, which is really exciting, guys. We're going to talk a little bit about the future of real estate, what all's happening in the industry, how things are going to progress, and to get some really amazing top-down views of our industry as a whole. A lot of times we're all like kind of down in the weeds, doing our thing, closing deals, dealing with clients. It's hard to see what's going on at 30 or 60 or 90,000 feet. And I think we've got that today.
I think our guest today is one of the most experienced people in real estate in the country. Honestly, her breadth and depth of knowledge and experience goes way beyond anybody on this call. No offense to anybody. But we are so excited to have her here. Before we bring her on, I wanted to let you guys know you are going to have the opportunity to ask questions. So if you can do us the favor and put them in the chat first. As you have them, we will try to hit those up as quickly as possible. But I want to make sure we give our guests as much time as possible for her to talk. I think with the shifts in market that we're seeing right now, with all the new NAR information, just everything going on, this is the absolute perfect person to talk to us today.
And I want to try out one thing really quickly. We'll cut this out of the final recording, but just this will show me that we all know what we're doing and we know how to use this, because today I'd love for it to be super engaging and interactive. So if you guys could, everybody hit on your react button and give me like a love or a thumbs up. I just want to see that we know what we're doing. We know how to use the buttons on Zoom. Give me either the love or the thumbs up. There, I went ahead and did it. John Sellers, I can see doing it. Joanne Graham, Stephanie. I can also see who's updated their Zoom server. Some of you are still using like the HTML 1.0 version. You need to update your computer, weirdos. All right, so that's good. Joanne's laughing at me. That's awesome. So without any further ado, this is the Senior Vice President of Brokerage Operations, third, I want to say, generation real estate agent and top-level professional, and a dear friend, Holly Mabery. Let's go ahead and bring her up on stage here. Holly, how are you, my friend?
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh, all these friendly faces. Love, love, love it.
So we just told everyone that you are going to predict the future with 100% accuracy today. Everything that you say is legally binding, obviously.
No,
like all good real estate agents. Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
No fluffing there at all, right?
Yeah.
None whatsoever. No, super stoked.
We've been looking forward to this because one thing that I know to be true about you is that you always have such a unique and amazing perspective. And I think it's because you are in a strata in our industry where you have optics on a lot of moving parts at once that many of us just don't have. And you're involved, I know, in the national discussion. Maybe it would be probably valuable for you to kind of talk about how you've been connected to NAR and the conversation that's happened there. But then also with your leadership role within EXP and the amount of visibility that gives you. Maybe let's start with, how are you connected to real estate? Give us a little bit on your background. Like, who is Holly Mabery to start with? That'll give us a little bit on who we're listening to today, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an open book with you guys, so and all my new friends. So I got into real estate right out of college in 1998 and went to work for my uncle who had had a Coldwell Banker franchise just outside of Sedona in Cottonwood, Arizona. Got to go to work for him, and he had bought the franchise in the early 80s, but had bought the brokerage founded by my grandfather. So all of that kind of stuff. My dad is a real estate attorney. So you can kind of see like we just ebb and flow and eat, sleep, drink, everything as far as housing, water rights, all of that kind of stuff. I also have a background in radio. So that's what I went to college for. It's amazing about radio. Like you need to, work like 4 or 5 jobs just to support your radio habit. So real estate seemed the way to go.
Yeah. Well, as you know, my background's in music, so I can relate. You can do music for your heart, not for your bank account. So hold on, I think we might have lost her here for a second. We'll get her back here in a second.
She's having some power issues. She lives a little bit out in the country, and who knows?
No worries there. Well, one of the things I can tell you though is that from the top level, Holly has been involved in the national discussion around some of the brokerage challenges that we've experienced with NAR, and I shouldn't say challenges, shifts that have happened with NAR. And so that's we'll cut out that other stuff. Don't worry, everyone. NAR is not challenged. And so but the interesting bit is her level of connection with that has been in Washington, D.C. And so I'll be excited to hear her talk in just a moment about how that conversation has been going, what clarity that's maybe given her, and how that's also impacted how companies like eXp, for instance, have been making proactive, not reactive adjustments to this shift in our industry. And I think that that's a really amazing thing to see happen. Holly, I think I see you back, maybe?
I'm back if you can unmute me.
Yeah, you're unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Okay, perfect. So, let's talk about getting involved with NAR, and let's talk about kind of that journey. I got involved in real estate, and I wanted to know more about how it worked.
Yeah.
And what was really important to me is making sure that I understood so I could best take care of my clients. So I joined the MLS committee. I started working on forms. I started doing all of these things really to help serve my clients at a higher level. I got to be local president at a very young age. And that got me also involved at the state level, working on water rights, working on legislation that really impacted homeownership in Arizona. And then that kind of led me down the path. I was served on the risk management committee, actually building forms. And the reason I'm sharing this all with you is every piece of my journey has led me to eXp. And what that has allowed me to do on your behalf as an agent here is actually put that experience to work for you. I was the 2012 president of Arizona. I got to testify in front of Congress on a bunch of different legislation around national scenic area and protecting homeownership rights. But then kind of what that allowed me to do, I was a designated broker. I've been a team leader at a different company. I've been on teams. I've done REOs, all of that. And I got asked to come be the designated broker from Arizona. And okay, so fun fact, I'm going to tell on you guys a little bit. I got hired and I get this call from this beautiful lady who's just like, hey, I need to know you. Okay, cool. I need to know what you're about. So you're going to come to my house for dinner. That sounds amazing. And so I show up and there's Jeff and Lexi with their family. And I went through the most intense 2-hour interview of my entire career. Who are you? Where are you from? What's going on? Why do you want to be our broker? How are you going to show up for us? How are you going to have our back? And it was the best thing that could have happened. So I love you both. Yeah, Joanne, just like there was, it was in love and there was food. So it can't be a true interrogation.
Well,
but I love that.
Say part of it was that when we moved to Arizona, I have a really high expectation for a designated broker. And we had an incredible broker in Arizona when I got there. And so then when he moved into a different role at eXp and Holly came on, I thought, man, I need help, I need a good designated broker because I don't like to screw up in my business. And so I wanted to know more about Holly, and gosh, we are just so unbelievably fortunate to have you, to have had you as our DB, but now to have you in a very senior position at eXp for so long. We're really blessed.
We are. Before that dinner, I actually used to have hair, guys, and then she just blew my mind, and look what happened. So
you're a little kind there, Jeff.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about, and I'm going to slight left turn here, but let's go into the NAR stuff that's going on. I've been calling it NAR banks because it's hilarious. But It's so NAR has had a lot of change going on. I know you've been core and central in many ways to the national discussion. And also, I was mentioning just a minute ago, being proactive with EXP rather than reactive. And I think that that's cool. But maybe give us some perspective and then drill down a little bit on how you've been involved and what you see going on there.
For sure. So it kind of winding back the clock in 2009, 2010. Obviously, we were in the middle of the dark times of everything that was going on real estate wise. You know, we had had the mortgage meltdown. We were all experiencing short sales and foreclosures. And I really started training agents. I got involved with the Real Estate Business Institute, started teaching the accredited buyer rep. And there were a couple of things that really stood out to me during that time as far as decoupling of commission. And the conversations we were having as instructors and building those classes, then trying to relay in the classroom of, hey, the industry is changing. Consumers are asking for different things. How are we relaying that? And so even in my own practice, I started decoupling the commission. I started having the conversation around compensation to a buyer's agent. Seller, what do you want to offer? This is your choice. It's not mine. And so really trying to do that as early as 2009, 2010. Well, then fast forward, and we saw the first lawsuit be filed in 2019. And I've been a member of the NAR Risk Management Committee the last few years, which has been incredibly helpful. Obviously, I've been going to the NAR convention and meetings, you know, serving on various committees. But what was so interesting to me about that is the educators kind of predicted it. We saw the change that was coming and the way consumers were asking us to be more a part of everything that was going on in their transaction. So how we spoke to them, what was important, and how we relayed the messaging. So the lawsuit gets filed, and then a second lawsuit gets filed, and then a third lawsuit gets filed. And what was interesting is two were in Illinois and then the one in Missouri. Well, the one in Missouri got to the finish line first as far as what was happening, the way the court system worked. What was so fascinating about watching that is our team in 2019, we started looking at buyer broker. We started looking about our training at EXP a little bit differently. Okay, what do we need to prepare for? How are we having these conversations? And I can remember sitting in the broker chair. I actually had an agent who was brought in as violating the code of ethics and not Article 1, basically not protecting the seller and giving them a choice. And what was so brilliant that this agent did in 2019, she actually had documentation. She did not pre-print the listing agreement. She basically said, seller, this is my fee. We're going to negotiate, you know, let's have this conversation. They had the conversation. She put down her fee and then she said, okay, what do you want to offer a buyer broker? And they split it apart. We had all of that, like case closed, we were dismissed, everything was great. Our agent rocked it. What was so important about that in 2020 is we were already being called on the carpet because of the lawsuit. And what was interesting is sitting in the NAR rooms is watching how legal counsel was truly trying to prepare us that we may not win and that there was a shift coming. So now flash forward to last fall, and we were working with our team in brokerage operations and all of the regional directors of, okay, what do we need to train the brokers on? What states are not consistent? Because we had quite a few states, thinking of like Louisiana and West Virginia, that literally did not have a buyer broker agreement. It was just kind of like, hey, go for it, have a good day. And so at that point in October, we were at EXPCon and we were having a conversation. And this was pre even the jury coming back. This was in the middle of the lawsuit. We were all at lunch and I said, guys, what do you think? We should write our own buyer broker. And around the table, I had several other past presidents of their state association, several people who had served on forms committees like I had. And I said, we can do this. We can do a nationwide form. Sat down and wrote one. I thought that would be the end of it. The jury came back, NAR lost, big money. Then they filed and they included EXP. And then we saw all the copycat lawsuits. And EXP is still being sued. We're in active litigation. We have not settled. And we are continuing to find our way forward. through this system. But this is where I'm going to pause and say this. You all, as our agents, are covered under the NAR settlement. So because you were an NAR member at close of business on August 17th, you were covered under the litigation and the settlement. Now, what happens next? We started looking at forms and we read a white paper by the Consumer Protection Bureau. These are the same folks that really kind of pushed for Congress to create the CFPB. They are the ones that changed the truth in lending statements that we saw come out in 2017. So they were more proactive on the buyers and borrowers' behalf. So you could actually read a statement, understand what those loan charges are. We looked at their white paper in February and we went, our buyer broker's not good enough. We started rewriting it. Then NAR settled in March. And that's when Leo called me on that Friday and he said, what do you think? And I said, we've got to get in front of our agents. And he goes, we're going to go live. I said, okay, great. What do you need? And he goes, no, you're going to do it with me. I love Leo for that because he said, we're going to go and we're going to own this space to take care of our agents. And he said, what information do we have? What can we share with them? And how do we prepare them? And that's why we came out and did that large webinar the Monday after the settlement was announced from the National Association of Realtors. So Leo's vision was very crystal clear. And we have been working partners. I get to be in his foxhole every day, really looking at where the industry is going. But this is the other cool thing that I want to share with you as you tee up your next question. Leo's got a very big vision, as do I, as far as impacting positively the industry. And this is what I want you to know. When I came in as broker of Arizona, my goal was to be the premier residential brokerage in Arizona. I wanted to have the best trained agents that were the most prepared to go out and take care of our clients. And now that's my vision for the national, everything that we're doing. So how do I make you the best prepared for everything that this industry is going to throw at us? And that's kind of where we're at. I know Leo's got an even grander vision. And then, of course, there's Glenn. And that guy has got us on Mars, selling houses and doing all sorts of stuff.
I love it. So, I mean, how lucky are we to have such grounded visionaries? And the fact that you and Leo and Glenn really have this history behind you of experience that you're bringing in this moment that is so critical. So my question, building on what you just said then, is for the agents on this call and everybody else that we touch, all the agents that we work with, how do we represent that? How do we embody what you're talking about? And how do we manifest this tool of being positioned well for in our favor? Because I see in one of our leadership calls we had a conversation around there are fits and spurts on social media of people kind of just talking really negatively, right? And everybody loves to point the finger, and EXP and other brokerages as well, but are always targets. And we feel defensive as EXP agents because we love this company. And so what's the best way to react? What's the best way to embody what you guys are doing?
Well, let's pull it apart a little bit, Lexi, because I think what's so important when you look at everything that we are all doing, it's not just leadership at EXP, it's all of you, boots on the ground. At the end of the day, our focus is on the consumer. If we are honest and upfront in how we represent and take care of them, everything else falls away. That's our North Star. So how do we take care of the consumer? Are we giving them options? Are we walking them through that transaction? And what I love that Leo said, he likened it to climbing Mount Everest. As you walk somebody through that climb, you're going up and back and up and back. But if you're their true Sherpa, you're walking next to them, you're helping them, right? You're their guide, you're giving them advice, but at the end of the day, they've got to do it for themselves. So if we're doing that with the consumer at every step, we win. Now, as far as strategically positioning and taking advantage, what I would say is this. If you are going out on a listing this afternoon, take a look at our seller's toolkit. What do you need? What have you touched base on? How do you prepare the seller for negotiation strategies I have the opportunity every so often to get to buy and work with buyers and sellers right now. And so I don't get to do it a whole lot, but getting to sit with a seller and say, okay, if we do this, this is what you can expect. It sets them for success. Anytime you can kind of predict the future in a way that it's like, hey, this is consistent because I just did this on my last 3 transactions. This is what I'm seeing in the marketplace. This is what you might be aware of. You are the professional that they need. And what we're seeing across the board post August 17th in the antitrust and the rule change is really consumers are like, yeah, I'm super happy to pay for a professional. In fact, I'm happy to pay for convenience, professionalism, and somebody who's going to take care of this for me. And so at the end of the day, if you walk in with that kind of confidence of, I'm here to help, I'm here to guide you, and I'm here to give you options, everything else becomes easier.
So, Holly, I'm a big proponent of always going back to the paperwork, meaning using the contract, using our forms as your baseline, as that kind of foundational piece, because if you know those, really can't go wrong. So but there's some confusion, right? I mean, we're this big national brokerage. We have kind of big meetings all mushed together, and not every state is exactly the same.
For sure.
So can you talk to our agents a little bit about that? Because I want people to make sure, like we always encourage, go to your state meetings. If in doubt, and you know this because you were my broker, call your broker. Remember, that is your like go-to. If there's ever a question in your mind, call your broker first. But what would you recommend for people knowing that we're all over the country? Everything's a little bit different. What do you say there?
How lucky are we? Because we're all over the country, we get that breadth of experience, and you both bringing this community together to have that conversation, to see what Heather's doing in Oregon versus what somebody's experiencing in Virginia or Georgia or Iowa. Like, my goodness, that's fantastic. And that's the power of EXP. The other thing I will say is, when you look at every state rolled out new forms, every state rolled out new forms this year. We chose to do our own listing agreement because what we found is the forms put out by the state associations did not meet the standard that we wanted to strive for. And the reason I share that, because I'm a big fan of the state associations. I believe in their forms. I believe in what they do. But what we found was lacking in the listing agreement, and specifically the buyer broker agreement, is they were very onerous. They didn't speak well to the consumer. They didn't put you in the position of truly being that trusted advisor. So we wanted to craft something that was so easy that if today was your first day in real estate, you could take that listing agreement and by paragraph, it guided somebody and you could have a conversation. And that was what was important, because a lot of the tools that we get from some of the state associations are clunky. They are hard to read. There's a lot of legalese. And if you don't know the nuances, man, you could really get jammed up. The listing and the buyer broker agreements, because those are between EXP and the client, we felt strongly that we could do those nationally and we could do them well. And so that's what we've done. Now, as you sit there, if you have all the comfort level of what your state has rolled out and you really like the state form, what I love about EXP is choice. And so if you like that form better, please use it. I'm not going to require something over another. I'm just going to give you best practices with each form, and each state broker is empowered to counsel you on how to go forward and take care of your client. So when you get into the state details, so I'm in Arizona. I know the Arizona law is completely different than if I were to go to Colorado. And so as a result, when you look at those two different things, and if I've got a license in both places, please call that specific state broker, because they are going to guide you. They've been taking classes from us as a company on how to train, how to coach you, what that looks like, what we see in the future, as well as their state association.
So, Holly, just to be clear, what you're saying is the EXP forms are compliant in every
nationwide.
state. So
nationwide.
truly, so in each state, now are there states that are requiring their forms in addition to?
No, everybody, this is the thing that's so cool. You can use the EXP form or you can use the state form.
Okay.
Because these are a personal agreement between EXP and the client, guys, we could write it on a napkin and it would be binding.
Good.
Right.
I'm not pro napkin, but like, it would work that way.
That's an amazing T-shirt, by the way. I'm not pro napkin.
But this,
I'm not pro napkin.
This is the important thing that I think there's just so much confusion, right? Like, so now do I have to do both forms? Do I have to, so I'm really glad that you've provided some clarity for us.
Yeah,
That's great.
We do have one quick question, and I have a follow-up after that. But in the chat, the EXP buyer broker agreement, am I right that it's non-exclusive?
Correct. The EXP buyer broker is non-exclusive, and we did that with intention because what we were finding is we wanted in this shift, we recognized that a lot of buyers are not going to sign an exclusive agreement. In fact, they're almost mad about it.
Yeah.
So how do we give them an off ramp and allow you to really ramp up your business? So two things to kind of think about as far as buyer broker. If you do a lot of online leads, you might consider doing a single property buyer broker, which is exclusive and it is for that single property. So I get a call, hey, I found you online, 789 Peach Street. I absolutely want to show that. Okay, great. I'm going to send you this, blah, blah, blah. And this is how we work together. You sign it. It's only for that property. We go through and we decide we really like each other and we want to be in business together. Okay, fantastic. But you're not, you're still speed dating. Okay, I've got a tool for that. And that's why we did the non-exclusive. We also got a lot of feedback from the Consumer Federation of America. They actually came back and gave us 2 thumbs up on both our buyer broker as well as our listing agreement. Because they were straightforward, we've been highly recommended by them as kind of the gold standard for forms, which I want you all to be proud of. And the reason I say that and share is because if we are entering into an agreement with a buyer and it's non-exclusive, I get to earn my business with you every single day. That's awesome. And I know we've got some competitors out there who are teaching the opposite. They're saying, lock those people up for 6 months and we'll sue them. I personally don't believe in that. I believe in putting the consumer first and taking care of them at a really high level. And I think that when you show up and do the right thing, that gets rewarded and your business grows.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I'm going to take us into a slightly different, maybe dark alley here, but it's a fun one. And so if you troll the internet for any period of time, you start seeing all the kind of conspiracy theorists out there, like this is a big play by big business for disintermediation, trying to ruin agency, et cetera, et cetera. First off, is there any credence that you see in any of that? And second, and I'm not sure that there is, but second off, what do you think will happen like moving forward? Is this going to create margin compression for agents? Do you predict that this actually might improve agency? I've heard some people predict very, very radically the other direction. We don't have to speak
to. This is the end of real estate.
Right. We're all going to be travel agents by the end of next week, kind of a thing. What do you see happening there? Where's this headed?
Well, I think a couple of things. Real estate agency is going to evolve in a positive way. I think that the last time we saw a really big shift in agency was in 1995, 1996, which was we went from basically everybody represented the seller and buyer beware, caveat emptor, right? Like that's the only Latin I know. And we went from that to true buyer representation. Well, we didn't embrace it. We didn't embrace it and go the full way. And I think what's happening right now is this is such a professionals market. And it's anytime we see that, anytime I've experienced that in my career, which has only been twice, this is the second time, a professionals market allows people to really build their business in a unique way. The first time was the mortgage meltdown in 2007. So I would argue right now that this is really important because if you, as being a true professional, going in and explaining to a consumer what they can expect, how they can expect it, and that fee for service, are some people going to balk at your fee for service? Sure. Then don't work with them. It becomes that clear. I think there are going to be some people who are going to shop on discount. Some consumers will shop on time. Some consumers are going to shop on value. And I think at the end of the day, you can serve any combination there. It's like that contractor's three-legged stool, right? Do you want it fast and cheap? Do you want it well built and expensive? Like, what do you want? What are you willing to do in that respect? And I think that that's where we're at in the real estate industry. Also, real estate is personal. It's relational. It is not a transaction that booking air flights is
Right.
easy to do. But I will also argue that we haven't seen travel agents go away. In fact, I think we've seen more of a resurgence because the people who can go in and truly research a trip based on your needs and wants and put that package together, people are paying for that. And it's really spectacular. So
There's actually
your
a emergence there, right? I mean, which is interesting.
100%.
We see the world changing this way where people are starting to recognize that like this human to human value, like we got all excited, everything's going to be web-based, everything's going to be an app. And then we're all like, okay, we're not talking to each other anymore. It got weird. Maybe we should just like do things together again like humans do.
100%. Well, and you bring up such a good point. And so I was reading about Alexis Ohani, and I never pronounce his name properly, founder of Reddit, and he was talking about. So he's been a huge investor in sports, particularly women's sports, and the NWSL, which is the National Women's Soccer League, Angel City, which was founded by Natalie Portman. So like all of these things. Now, why am I telling you a soccer story? Well, what I love that he came back with, and oh, by the way, he's married to pretty famous tennis star and Serena Williams, came back and he said, I'm continuing to focus on investing in athletics because with the rise of AI, we are going to get to a point as a culture where we won't be able to determine online what is real and what is AI. And so we will crave the human existence and the human experience, which really comes down to things that are flawed and things that maybe are challenged and people who are there. So we're going to see the rise in live events, music, plays, theater, and not going to the movies because that's polished. They want live everything. So sports. And so that opportunity to meet somebody, can we sell a house over the internet? Absolutely. COVID proved that.
Right.
But what did people want? They wanted your opinion. They wanted to understand. They wanted to have a conversation. And so how you show up in those moments becomes a game changer.
I love that.
My challenge to all of you would be look at your business right now. Are you online leads? Are you working past clients? All of that. They're both similar in that how you show up, your client picked you on purpose. How you show up for them, what it means. So as a result, how are you explaining the new normal? How are you explaining or preparing them for what becomes next? And that's the magic. Like the magic hour is how we explain what comes next. So that's semi-predicting the future, but walking people along that path. And that's where I get excited. So if you look at the everything going on in the world, AI, you're looking at legislation changing, you're looking at all the lawsuits. I kind of look at the lawsuits and I go, yep, this is our new normal. Do I like it? No. Is this where we live now? Yeah. Does it work being mad about it? No, it's wasted energy. So let's go forward.
Bingo. I love that. You know, it's interesting because I remember when things in like the auto industry, you saw like Carvana and so like you can buy a car in a vending machine basically. And did that ruin the end? No. Did it create a little bit of like a blip on the radar? Yeah, but they're like responsible for maybe 1%, like less than 1% of if people still crave, and here's why. If I go to buy a car, I don't know enough about cars to navigate that transaction intelligently without a guide. And I believe that houses are dynamically more complex and properties than cars. The transaction's much larger. You need a guide. You need that safety and security of knowing that you have a trusted professional, a fiduciary who's in your corner to protect you. And by the way, great quote here from Darren Mason in the chat. He says, those responsible for creating the EXP agreements, by the way, Holly, thanks, deserve a lot of credit. That's not an easy move. The timing and content have differentiated EXP from the majority of the industry in a very valuable way. And I couldn't agree more. I've been proud to be a part of the company who's like, we're not just going to react, we're going to get out in front. We're going to be brave instead of scared. For me, that's thrilling. We've always been a brave company. We were disruptive from the beginning, so we should continue to be brave.
It's huge. So I think I know where you're going, but if not, I'll lead you there.
Go.
Do it. I don't know where I was going. So,
well, I was just going to say, so let's talk about being brave.
Yeah.
Getting out in front right now in the market has been a challenge. I know that you all, as boots on the ground, have experienced some scrapes and bruises, and I want to address that head on. As a company, we made the determination mid-June to not do broker-to-broker compensation when the new rule changes. When MLS took away compensation off the MLS, okay, great. Any compensation needs to come directly from seller to buyer broker. And I know in some instances that's been really, really hard. You've had folks that have maybe yelled at you. They didn't understand. They thought that, you know, we were the mean company. Lots of misinformation on the interwebs. What I will say is this. When you decouple compensation and you focus on your fee for service as a listing broker, what's so cool there is you and your seller then get to have a better conversation about how they want to position their home in the market, how they want to take care of their client or a future buyer, advertising, all of those things. And what was so important to us is, one, how do we as a company protect you and your business? How do we basically do our best to predict the future as far as concerns from the Department of Justice, from future litigation? And so that's why we took that what some people consider a radical stance that was more than the antitrust lawsuit called for, because we believed it was the right thing to do on behalf of the consumer. I know it hasn't been easy the last 6 weeks. I know that many of you have been maybe frustrated. And some of you are like, I didn't even notice I didn't have a problem, which is fantastic. What we are seeing is settling down as people go, oh, that makes sense. And actually, we've had brokers that we've been in communication with, because we went on an all-out. I was making phone calls. Leo was making phone calls. We were talking to other brokerages, other companies, competitors, saying, hey, this is why we're not doing it. You do you. We respect it, but this is our why. And the minute we were having those honest conversations with other companies, they were like, yeah, we're going to look at that too. And so as an industry, putting this consumer first continues to serve us. And that's where we're focused right now. So let's talk about next, if I can, and then get back to other questions. One of the things that Leo and I have been talking a lot about, and Leo's been doing podcasts. The guy's a machine. He's like doing 2 to 3 a week. We were in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago. And in Washington, D.C., for the RIS Media CEO and Leadership Connect, there was a lot of conversation around MLS and clear cooperation. So a couple of years ago, the National Association of Realtors gave us a rule around clear cooperation, so that if you go take a listing, it needs to go into the MLS within a designated time period. We didn't want to have a lot of off-market things that the consumers thought were being marketed properly, but maybe weren't. What was important in this nuance is we've got several competitors who are very articulate right now and loud around this rule change. And in fact, they called for emergency meetings of NAR to make this rule change and make it go away. This is what I'll say. We don't agree. Leo actually came out very forcefully at RIS. We've actually issued a couple of position statements around this. And the reason being is this: we believe that the consumer should have access to all the listings they possibly can within a reasonable time frame. Could the rule be modified? Sure. We recognize that some sellers, law enforcement, judges, maybe very, very high profile celebrities do not want to be in the MLS for whatever the reason is. Okay, carve them out. Have an exception. That makes sense to me. I've worked a lot with law enforcement. We withheld their things from the MLS and county records. Not uncommon. Those are reasonable asks. The average consumer still wants to work with a professional that can see as many listings as possible. And so as a result, we have gone before the MLS Rules Committee, been very articulate with them. Leo went before them last week and basically asked, hey, we believe in this. We think that a nationwide framework is best for our industry. And that's what we ask NAR to consider going forward. Also, we think it's really important that the US real estate industry is one of the most liquid in the world. You can put a house on the market and potentially sell it same day because of access to the MLS, because of the cooperation amongst competitors, which is really unique and quite special. So, how do we perpetuate that? Because if you go to the UK or you go to Australia, South Africa, which EXP is in, and we're experiencing real time, it's costing professionals thousands of dollars to be a part of multiple platforms to just find a listing for their client. It's absurd.
Yep.
So that's where we're positioning now. That's where we're actively promoting. How do we take care of the industry in our stewardship? How do we do the right thing on behalf of consumers? So just a little behind the scenes of what we're working on at the moment.
That's awesome. So do you ever foresee, this is a totally crazy question, but do you ever foresee some type of a national MLS or something that unifies the positioning across the US, or is that probably 50 years down the road?
You know what? It's hard to tell. Like, I'm going to go to my magic 8 ball on that. That's going to tell me to come back tomorrow.
Right.
The reason I say that is there's 500 MLSs throughout the country.
Yep.
I think we will see some natural attrition of smaller MLSs because it's costly. It's a very expensive business to stay in. And I think that it's important because our consumers do not see the artificial boundaries we've created as an industry, whether it's state lines and state rules or it's MLS boundaries. And so I think it's really important that we continue to look forward as to what makes sense. And that speaks easily to EXP. We're one company nationally. So, I mean, that it reminds me of that old Southwest commercial. You're free to move about the country. And
Right.
that's really where we're at. Like, how do we take care of our agents who are in multiple states? How do we allow that to happen? How do we proactively look at standardizing things in such a way within our company that allows you to do a better business? And that's what we're focused on.
It was one of the big draws for us, and this to EXP was this kind of decoupling of the need to nickel and dime agents for every single thing that they're trying to do to enhance their own business, to provide better value to their customers, right? It wasn't just about, I want to take more. It was about, I want to do more, and my company's standing in the way or is charging me for every little bit. And I have seen EXP consistently along the time that we've been here, making decisions that are very pro-consumer, very pro-agency. And I love that, continue to love it. We do have some questions.
Let's
go ahead.
Let's go quickly to Joanne.
Joanne Graham.
Hi. Thanks. So on this exclusive MLS thing, so the way I read our MLS agreement, it says that if it's an exclusive, I really can't tell anybody about it except my office, and I can't put it on social media, and I can't share it with other agents. And the minute I do, I have to put it on MLS within 24 hours. That's what it says. I think so I tell my clients, it's a secret listing. Like you want me to list it, but you don't want an MLS, and I can't tell anyone about it. So what good is it, right? I mean, I'll already bring my buyers, but anyway, but the conflict I have is that we have this real estate group where they're constantly talking about their pocket listings or their exclusive listings. So they're sharing it beyond their office. They're sharing it basically in this closed group, which they think is okay because it's closed and it's not public social media. And they're doing, and anytime that I bring it up, they say, it's what's best for my seller. I'm beholden to my seller. And this is what's best for my seller that I tell you, and you. And so for me, it's a conflict. I don't know how to really manage it. And then basically people are saying, Nobody's going to turn you in for telling me about your listing. Go ahead and tell me. So what is your take on that?
Thank you for going to the meat of it. I think a couple of things. It's tricky. May I have a seller that I list this afternoon and their daughter's bedroom is Barbie pink and we got to take care of it this weekend. I know that if I don't have my listing agreement signed and starting today, they're immediately going to walk across the street and tell the neighbor, hey, I just listed the house. And what does the neighbor have? They've got a buyer. So if I go non-exclusive right now, great, they're selling their house to the neighbor or somebody like that while we're waiting for the house to be painted. I also believe that the bulk of the work that you do as a listing agent is broken into three parts. The first part is pre-listing. You're talking to them about what to list for. You're talking about the market. You're setting a strategy for marketing. You're talking about potential buyer pool, how you show up, all of that. And the minute you do that and you lock that in your listing agreement, okay, that's a good 40%, 45% of what you do. The other bulk of it is contract to close, that negotiation, everything. Putting up the sign, placing ads, showing follow-up. Yeah, that's lovely because you see it, but that's easy. The bulk of how you show up is in those two cases. So when you look at a private listing network like what you're describing, most sellers or buyers only believe what their agents tell them. When we look at the statistics, most buyers only interview one agent. Most sellers only interview one agent. So if their agent's like, hey, I'm going to put you in this private listing network, these are the top producers in our area, they'll bring a buyer and that way we can get you sold super fast. Cool. I always ask people when I go in to take a listing, how many folks are you interviewing? These are questions you might consider. And oh, by the way, let's talk about agency and what it means to you. If you share, and my favorite script is, to use there is, look, please don't share anything with another agent that you wouldn't want to use against you in a negotiation. And that usually they sit back and they're like, wait, what? If you share anything that you wouldn't want used against you in a negotiation, why you're selling, how fast you need to sell, the maximum or minimum amount you're willing to take, if there's a family need, health forces sale, whatever. The minute you say that to any agent that walks in, you don't list with them, they may have a buyer and they're going to use it against you. So in that private listing network, that transparency goes away as well. What's being said? And so I always challenge in that way. What's being said? If it's not being said to everybody, how are you consistent? And that becomes our next big lawsuit.
Huh.
So I do anticipate that coming.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And well, so I don't want to go too far down that hole just yet because I want to make sure that we do capture as many of these questions as possible because people are really excited that they have you as a resource. We did on the buyer agency contract or agreements. Joe Yates asked, are we seeing agents right now losing commissions or are we doing pretty well on this so far? Have we seen any hiccups along the way with compensation actually happening, I guess is the question there.
Sure. What we're seeing overall nationally is our buyer's agents are doing really well when they're using the form. And so there have been those, oops, I didn't realize that was today moments where the buyer broker was not executed. And so we are lovingly working people through those. We've had some folks work for free, which that breaks my heart every time because you guys work too hard in your business and protecting your family. So for the most part, we're seeing that clients, when you explain how you show up and the benefit to hiring you, right? Your value is innate. That's just who you are. How you match that value to their benefit, because that meets them with their need, that's a whole nother level. And now you really start to look at what you charge, how you charge, and people show up for you.
Holly, I think a lot of people, some people have been using a buyer broker agreement from the beginning. That's how they were taught. And this is just like, duh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some nuances, right, that are a little bit different now. But For somebody who's never used that and felt like that was impersonal and was like, no, this is a relationship contract between me and my buyer. A lot of people have been working that way for years. Can you give us a sample articulation of what it sounds like to explain to a buyer? Because just give us a script, a little spiel, if you don't mind, because I know that you are master at this, and some people honestly just don't know how.
Sure. So I'll do my best here. I think the key is when you go to meet a buyer, it's like, I want to share with you how we work in our state. And in our state, you're going to get to choose your agent. And when you choose your agent, this is what it means to you. I'm going to show up in these ways. And I always go into old car and this acronym that breaks down like this: obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable skill and care. So in our state, you get to choose your agent. When you choose your agent, you're actually going to sign an election form that says, I'm going to go to work for you as your agent. And this is what I owe you: confidentiality. Basically, how I show up, I can't tell your secrets. Anything that you say stays with me forever. I'm a ship at sea that will never find a port, kind of thing. Now, obedience says, I'm going to lawfully take instruction from you. I'm going to do all the right things, and I'm going to be your guide. Loyalty says, I'm going to educate you on the market, and I'm going to also put your needs above others. So if I just get a sign call and somebody says, hey, tell me what this house is, but you're my seller, my loyalty is to you. I'm not going to tell them how low you would go. Disclosure, this is everything that you should know about the property. Gosh, did the roof blow off last week? Was there a fire? All of those material facts, but I'm also going to disclose anything that would impact your negotiating style. Are there multiple offers? What kinds of contracts we should use? Additionally, I'm going to also disclose like the cost of ownership. If you've got propane, is that expensive to refill? Like how much is going through the house? Those types of things. Then you get into the accounting, also cost of ownership. That's going to be negotiating, how money is held, types of loans, fees, things of that nature. And then finally, reasonable skill and care is that bow. What's important to this for you as you select your agent? What is reasonable skill and care? That means I know my forms. I know how to create a contingency to best protect you and your family, the earnest money you might have, inspection periods, but then also reasonable skill and care says, I'm going to give you a wide variety of things that we can choose from as a buyer's agent. Now, finally, as we go to work together, I need to also establish that fee. And this is what my fee for service is. When you go to interview any agent, they have to establish that fee for service before we open a door for you. We want to be on the same page so there's no surprises. And so I would love to answer any questions you have. What would you like to know?
I love that. And I love that you added in any agent you talk to is going to have to establish this, because that is the one thing that I think has been a beautiful common element, is that it's the law. It's one of those
It's
things.
not the law. Let me pause you right there. It's
Okay,
not the
okay,
law.
good.
It's our rule
Right.
that we get
Okay.
to work on. Now, some states, let's see, you've got Iowa, Indiana, and New Jersey. It is the law. They
Okay.
actually went to the state legislature, but it's not the law. So please don't use
Okay.
that because
Good.
it's
See,
tripping
it's a
people up.
mistake. Yeah.
No, I just want to help you all. But the key is in this, and what I love that I'm seeing agents utilize right now, especially if they're doing online leads, they're literally doing a professional video, kind of using that scripting I just used, explaining agency, how we would go to work for you, all of that kind of thing, what you can expect. So the online lead, yes, I'm going to set up this showing. I'm going to make it frictionless. Happy to meet you tomorrow at 3. I'm going to send you a quick video to explain how we would work together to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
And then I'm going to follow up. So I text them the video. He texts them his YouTube link. They watch it. It's a 2-minute video, if that. And then he texts, do you have any questions? Is there anything you'd like to know? Or gets them on the phone. And then he says, okay, how would you like to pay my fee when you find your right house? and these are the options. And we've outlined those options on the buyer broker.
Right.
We can ask the seller, you can pay, or we can get a credit from the seller.
Yeah.
And they go, we're good. And
you know what I love
you send it.
In this process, and this is something that you and Lexi do similarly, and I'm sure we have so many top agents on this call, it's ridiculous. But it's is that you're using things that I think we learned early on that sometimes we gloss over, like old car. I remember learning that when I was like getting my license, right? And I'm like, yeah, this is what I owe my client. But what you start to realize along the way is that this is what top agents actually use to explain their you were being given tools, not just meaningless drivel to recite and vomit on an exam so you could pass it with a 70%, right? Like this is really, it's stuff that you can use with your clients. And I love that. By the way, I put the breakdown for old car in the chat here if anybody didn't, write it down. So it's there for you. But it is important to understand these things. It's kind of like utilizing the contract. I know that's something that you really harp on to explain the process as well for people. These are all parts of how we gain clarity in terms of our connection with the consumer. And clarity is power. Ultimately, the best way to be able to execute at a high level is to have a clear process, right? If you go on to, think about anything that you use on a regular basis. There might be 10 different options for who could deliver dinner to you tonight, right? DoorDash and GrubDash and whatever all the other ones are. I don't know how they all work. So you're choosing, but the one that you're likely to use is the one that's the easiest to execute with. And it's because it's clear and it has a very easily defined process. If you, with your consumer, are clear and they understand what's going on and there's not all this muddy confusion and don't look over here, look over here, and don't look over here, right? This is what's happening in our industry. I actually do also view it as a good thing. Ultimately, the way that we're getting there feels like some scrapes and bruises, but I love
For
that
sure.
you point out that everybody's having to go through the same door. And so it's not really, it doesn't create a disproportionate competitive advantage for one person because everybody has to adjust to the new reality at the same time.
I think that's the key in all of this is it's not a one-off. It's not an EXP rule. It's not, a one state rule. We are seeing it nationally, and the easier you can make this to remove friction for the client, because your confidence makes all the difference. Like how you show up. If you show up like, well, I don't know, like, would you sign this form so I can get paid? Like, no, man, I'm not doing that for you. Like not today and definitely not tomorrow.
Right.
But if you show up and you say, okay, this is how I show up. This is how I'm going to take care of you and your family on this amazing journey together all the way through. This is what you can expect from me. And oh, by the way, this is something I need to have you sign because it establishes how we work together and also that fee for service. Are you ready? Let's go. Like that thing, huge game changer.
Yeah.
So Holly, how do you recommend then that agents that are working with buyers, what's the best way to contact a listing agent to ask them about compensation? There's so much confusion about all of this right now. People are almost in paralysis because they're afraid to screw it up. For real.
I want to give you, I get it.
Can you even call a listing agent to say,
100%.
hey, are you deep? So
this is what I'll say. If the house is on the market, I'm going to assume there's compensation available. Just like if a house is on the market, I'm going to assume the seller is willing to do a home warranty. Like you and I have always had that mindset that we're going to go and we're going to negotiate. And so why wouldn't we go there? Now, can I call a listing agent in advance and see if they're offering compensation through the seller? Sure. Why not? Now, am I going to expect phone calls back? No. Is that going to keep me from showing it? Absolutely not. My buyer wants to see that house. It could be a good fit. And my buyer and I have already established 3 different ways to get paid.
Yeah.
They can pay me directly. The seller can compensate through a seller to buyer broker, or we can put it in the contract as a concession. Totally optional. And depending on what the seller is doing, we negotiate it. That is not a problem. So I really want to take the pain out of that, of you can't screw this up. Do the right thing and take care of your client.
And remember, tools and options, those 2 words keep coming up, and those are so essential and critical in the work that we do, especially in regard to this. And I love the fact that there's the single showing option, because that gives you some flexibility, because part of what we should be is flexible. I mean, even the way that everybody was used to doing it, you could see variable in what that commission being offered was, right? And you're going to do the right thing. You didn't ever make it conditional for your clients, because you're like, it doesn't matter if it's 1% or 17%. Although if you put
Exactly.
17%, like woohoo. But so it just feels and looks a little bit different. The process has changed, but I love that you guys have created something to allow that flexibility to still be there.
I think what's so important at the end of the day is you're empowered. You're empowered beyond your wild imagination. And I think that as we go forward in this market, the best business builders are going to be those professionals who show up and use the tools, because not everything is a hammer and not everything needs to be a hammer. And that's what's so critical about this time is in a professional's market, what is it that you're putting in your toolbox? How are you utilizing it? How are you communicating with your client? Like, this is what you can expect next. When I go back to the short sale and the dark times, you and I were so good at doing short sales because we took the time to explain what people could expect next from us. We took the time to walk them through, and they felt empowered because in many instances, they had to sign off what we were getting paid. And they were so excited to do that because we were showing up in a way that was wild beyond their imagination. They had no idea that we had this skill set. Some days we didn't know we had that skill set. And so as a result, it becomes that opportunity. Right now is that time again. And so as you look at everything that you're doing, so I've seen a couple of the comments. Create your own YouTube. And this is what I will say. If you are not doing video because you're afraid of how you look, that's okay. It's how you look in real life. Just do it. It's going to be just fine.
That's
So
what I always say.
yeah, like please create your own YouTube. I want you to have links on your YouTube that you can send out and text out that are, 60-second, 90-second, like explaining the process, because consumers are confused. Like my dad emailed me the other night and he goes, so we've got this piece of vacant land. How does the lawsuit affect? Like, what do we need to do? And what's different? And so I sent him a whole bunch of stuff, and he's an attorney. And he goes, well, I don't understand. The form hasn't changed. And I said, no, it hasn't. We just negotiate a little bit differently. And there's a strategy behind it. And he goes, well, do I need to do anything right now? And I'm like, only if you'd like to. That's the power of all of this, is we need to reassure the consumer that we understand. And for those of you who are like, I'm not sure I understand. Okay. I want you to get into your next state meeting, because that's where we're reinforcing everything with your broker team.
And the one thing I know, people get shy about asking questions because nobody wants to out themselves as being a dumb bunny, right? But the only dumb bunny in the room is the person that doesn't ask the question, because we all know everybody has questions right now. And
Sure.
I always feel like, because in a brokerage model, we ultimately represent something bigger than just us, right? And so if you don't know, and bottom line is, go to the forms, read the forms, know the forms, talk to your broker, ask the questions so that you have that tool and you actually know how to use it. There's nothing worse than if you've ever held a pneumatic nail gun and you don't really know how to use it, you can really hurt yourself, right? So,
Is that experience speaking, Lexi? It was a very specific example.
You do have powerful tools that you can and should and are obligated to use, but you need to understand them. And so ask the questions right now. And now is the time. Strangely and really terrifyingly, there are brokerage owners out there that don't know that any of this is happening. Now, how that's possible, I'm not sure. We are so fortunate to have leadership. Let me ask this question. So going to the state meetings is crucial. Going into EXP World to see and talk to your broker, messaging them on Workplace. But here's my question. Workplace is going away. it's been a huge resource for a lot of agents and it makes people nervous. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and what's happening? Because I don't think there's a lot of clarity and people are like, what are we going to do? Can you talk about that?
For sure. So we're actively working on different replacement platforms. And so, Glenn, he loves new technology. So we've been beta testing a lot of different things. We're into one right now. We will have a replacement very soon. On the brokerage ops side, we recognize the how we communicate with all of our agents, because you reach out when you need us, and we want to meet you where you're at, whether it's via video, whatever it might be. So we're really focused on how we continue to up our game and be consistent for you. So all of that, yes, it's going to be revealed. I don't have a solid answer today, but we've got plenty of time, and we're very focused on the right thing. Now, the other thing along all of this, because I gave you the listing toolkit, I want to give you the buyer toolkit. The buyer toolkit, actually, we've got the FAQ for what do I do now? What does this mean? How do I convey this? I've also got several classes that Leo and I have done, that I have done, that are all on the EXP YouTube channel, but you can download them easily from the buyer toolkit. All of the forms are there, so you can utilize those. It's really important. And sneak peek, we are rolling out the upgraded buyer listing, or the buyer toolkit. That's being released next week. So you heard it here first. So like that buyer package, like when you go to meet a buyer for the first time, or maybe a buyer that you haven't worked with in a while, great. We've got all new fresh materials we've been working on in the lab, and we'll be releasing that next week. It may be live by end of week, so be watching for that.
That's awesome. And by the way, for anyone who is watching the chat, Liz, thank you, Liz, for staying on top of it today. I can tell you're killing it. Also just posted that buyer toolkit on there for anybody who needs the link. And just for clarity, somebody said this a minute ago, really appreciate the clarification. EXP is not getting rid of Workplace. Meta is getting rid of Workplace on their end. So just we're having to adjust, but that's just because they're not going to continue supporting that platform. But I'm excited because generally it's like anything. When you're forced into change, it's an opportunity to say, okay, well, what would be better, not the same. And my assumption, given the way you iterated that, is that's where we're headed.
So we have 20 minutes left. We could spend all day on here with you. I'm curious, as we're coming into Q4, it's always a critical time of year for a lot of reasons, but what would you say to everybody on here? What can they be doing? What should they be doing? This market is unusual. And I think part of the reason that it's unusual, at least in my perspective, is that it comes on the heels of that insane market that we had where money was coming out of I don't even know what happened.
Boom or bust, right?
It was insanity, right? I'm still scratching my head going, this was so fascinating. So it feels though extra uncomfortable and difficult now on the heels of that, right? So what would you give in terms of advice or direction to people right now as they're coming into the end of the year and moving into 2025? Like, how should we be thinking as agents?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, we're coming off of our first true seller's market in like 20 years. And so that's a wild swing. We're now moving to a more equilibrium market. And I know that is very nuanced. It depends on your location. It depends on your price point, all of those factors. Like real estate is personal and local. So I'm talking kind of broadly. Also, we're going to see the interest rate come down a little bit more. And we're anticipating it will through at least Q2, Q3 of next year. So that should move people that were in that rate locked mindset of I can't go anywhere, that they're like, okay, I can breathe a little bit. That's palatable. I have to make a life change, because people are now being forced to move their world. Family, job, health reasons, all of those things are now coming into play that maybe they've been holding off on. And so we're going to start to see inventory really break loose. What we saw in COVID, in that insanity that you described, that was probably a once in a lifetime thing. Like, hopefully never happens again because we don't have a worldwide pandemic. But I think we are going to see just kind of other things to be nuanced. So business wise, let's talk about you and what I want you to think about for the next 30 days. I want you to focus solely on your communication style, how you show up. And I would break it down into three parts: how you communicate with other agents. Are you friendly? Are you welcoming? Are you calling people back? Like, what can they expect? Because in this kind of market, professionals show up. And when professionals show up, people recognize it and they're like, oh, they're good to work with. And so how you show up for other agents is going to be critical in the next 30, 45, 60 days. Second is your communication with clients. We are going to have to go a little bit deeper. And so if you've taken a listing, I want you to prepare to contact them, much like we did during the REO days. You're contacting them every week, probably on showings, a follow-up, but then strategically every 15 days, you're talking about market shifts, what's going on, what went under contract, what new listings are the prices down a little bit? Are you seeing different strategies be deployed? All of that kind of thing. Very, very critical as we go through the next 6 months. And then finally, how are you educating people that you haven't met yet? Like, can I find you and understand how you work? And I've never met you face to face. That online presence, your YouTube, your LinkedIn, all of those tools in your toolbox, your video blog, your profile, your whatever, your Instagram. What does that look like? And so that communication strategy that you do for the next 30 days is going to make you money through all of next year. And if you double down on it, it's going to reap all of those rewards. The second thing that I want you to do, in addition to communication, is know your new forms, know them inside and out, lean into them, be super comfortable with them, present them, practice presenting them to somebody who is kind of obstinate or obtuse about real estate. Like, I don't really care. Like, this is where
I'm available if you need me.
but just kind of do that, because the more you get comfortable and you can have a conversation as opposed to reading word for word, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And then finally, like, I want you to have a game plan of how you are going to build your business, right? This is business planning season, not just pumpkin spice latte season. So, like, dig in. And I think it becomes really important as you look to the fall. Like, how are you getting ready to better your business? Because 2025 is your year. Like, this is the year that I'm predicting that we absolutely blow the doors off this joint. Like, we're going to do things that will shock everyone.
Yeah.
Well, we have John Sellers is actually going to lead us in a couple of weeks in a business planning session. We try to do a little bit of that toward the end of the year, which is great. In terms of the forms, one of the things that I always have liked to do is to look at the forms and be able to read it verbatim, but then explain it in different words so that I can be not only relatable, but sometimes you need a layman's translation for people to say, this is what it says, this is what it means to you as the buyer, as the seller. And so if you, and that's the way that you know the forms is when you can do that. So, we have a lot of groups that you can see on here that get together in an office for this session, or we do online opportunities all the time for people. So if anybody out there wants to practice some of that stuff, let us know, put it in the community Facebook group, and we'll get something going.
Well, it's a huge opportunity to really stretch your brain. Anytime that you're looking at a document and you feel like you can explain it and simplify it, I actually believe that's a true sign of intelligence. But everyone on here is intelligent. You may need to spend the time. And the reality is, try this with somebody who's young and has no experience or has no experience in the industry, and explain it to them. And if they're like, you haven't gotten there yet, you're not explaining it well. If they still feel confused, or if you feel confused, and it's a beautiful litmus test on whether or not you're ready to go to market with that. And it reminds me of the very first time I ever went into a listing appointment. I am so happy that's not on the internet. Like, that was, I'm sure, the worst thing that's ever happened in real estate. And the beauty is, as you continue to work on something, you're going to get better at it over time. So just take a deep breath and allow it to progress naturally. I love, by the way, your prediction, let's call it pseudo prediction. And by the way, there's an old quote about predictions. People who make predictions, there's only two kinds: those who are wrong, those who are wrong, and those who know that they're wrong. That's what it is. Yeah. So anyway, don't worry about making predictions. It's all good. We all know what that means. I will say, as we're progressing forward, and you said that you think that next year is going to be super exciting. There's a lot to stay tuned about and be excited for. Would you mind giving some kind of clarity on what things are leading you to be bullish or optimistic about the future?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think we're going to see inventory free up because of the interest rate. I think that because we are in such a professionals market, those who are digging in are going to be able to see things that are different. I know as a company, we are very focused strategically on the use of AI and how we can enhance our services to you, how we can move more quickly, if you will. And what that looks like. So I think there's some refinements definitely headed that way. I do anticipate we're going to see some rule changes. I do anticipate the Department of Justice weighing in on different things. Okay, cool. Next. Right. People still need a place to live. We are in one of the best countries in the world to invest in real estate because we have a stable economy. We have a very stable government. And those two things are very special and unique. And so as a result, how we show up, how we have these conversations is going to make all the difference. So that's where I get excited. I look at 2025 as that opportunity where 2024, we were unsure. It's an election year. Everybody kind of holds their breath. And it doesn't matter what side you're on, everybody holds their breath. And then the morning after, everybody goes, okay, and they get back to work. And so it becomes really, really important historically that we focus on what's next. We focus on what we can do locally in communicating our value and what we see in the market. So I used to, as a full-time agent, I would do, predictions of the year, like what it would look like. And it's like, hey, super happy to be wrong. Or this is something that I can't wait to come back and read in 6 months and see what it looked like. Look at where your inventory is coming from. Look at feeder markets. I think that we're going to see a lot of movement around the country based on everything from environment. And what I mean by that is, wildfires and earthquakes and floods and all of those types of things. Where do people want to live? We're also seeing the insurance industry really start to do things. California, State Farm has pulled out of a large portion of California. So I'm very mindful when I go take a listing right now. I'm asking, what is your current homeowner's insurance? Yep. Because that's an affordability factor. Yep. We're seeing that happen in Florida as well. So what does that look like? And we're going to see people move around the country that way. I think education, opportunity, not just jobs, but what they have access to beyond what they thought they could do.
Yeah, and it's what I love is you're also saying without saying, know your stuff, guys. As these changes are happening around the country, there are shifting migratory patterns. Humans have migration patterns like birds do. We just try not to think of ourselves as animals because it feels better. But what's interesting is it's shifting up our migration right now. We can work from anywhere, right? There's a lot of that. EXP was on the forefront of that in real estate brokerage, which is beautiful. But as people are starting to move, they're saying, oh, I could live in a different place, or maybe I want to be in a big city, or maybe I don't want to be in a big city. Maybe I want to be in the country, et cetera. And so we're seeing this shift happen. Your ability to speak to that as it starts to occur, or the other market demands, and you're absolutely right, wildfires, earthquakes, hurricanes, et cetera, those are things that start to shift. Guys, if you aren't studying and understanding insurance and reinsurance, I know this is something that Lexi developed a lot of expertise in the last year with owning a property in Puerto Rico. We were oceanfront, and holy moly, that's been a big shift. in the industry start to know that. Even if it doesn't directly impact your market, it will impact people expatriating out of markets where it is deeply impacting them into your market. And so you want to know it so that you can be on the bleeding edge. And understanding these things is part of what gives you the vocabulary in real estate to be a true expert. And I remember when Mark Cuban said, the way to become number one in any industry is to just master the vocabulary better than anyone else. And it's fascinating because I actually believe that if you can truly master all of the concepts and the nitty-gritty vocabulary in real estate, you will know it pretty well. You'll know how the terms relate to each other and so forth. And if you hear terms and they kind of go blah, 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 past your ear and you don't understand, there's a good chance you're being left behind and left out of certain parts of the market where you could benefit, right? And I love that. That's a great perspective. Good stuff.
I think the opportunity real fast along those lines is ask questions and stay curious. That's probably going to serve you really well here in the coming year. I know, and I speak from experience. Like anytime I wasn't sure, I asked to be a part of something. I went in wet behind the ears, the rookie. I was usually the youngest person in the room, and that has allowed me to kind of build my business, to get to be here with you guys. Like I look at all of that is because I kept asking questions and raising my hand and saying, hey, I'd like to be a fly on the wall. Is that possible? I'd love to learn more. Can I ask you some questions? That kind of thing has served so well because now I can take care of my clients and now I get to take care of you in that way.
Yeah, that's nice. So we do have a question here from Liz in the chat that she says, I keep hearing things about the next big change being January 15. What is this about? Is that something that you can comment on?
I'm unaware of January 15. So if you find something via Dr. Google, let me know. What is going to happen with regard to the antitrust lawsuit? The next big date is going to be in November, right before Thanksgiving. And what will happen is the judge has to ratify all the settlement agreements. And there's some consternation that the judge may or may not. I don't think we would have gotten this far along, and plaintiffs' counsel really looking at how they're going to invest their winnings, without some indication from the judge that there was a concern. Now, will we see the DOJ weigh in advance of the November hearing? We could. We are seeing many people go and speak to the DOJ, and likely if we see anything, it could be in the spring as we look at next. I think when I consider everything that's going on and lawsuits and the Department of Justice and concerns, at the end of the day, what matters to the consumer is where they're going to put their family, how they're going to take care of their family, and you have the ability to guide them in that. And that's the most powerful thing of all of this. So,
and Holly, just to interrupt for a quick second there. Yes, 100%. We are that guide. We are that person for our clients. And what we need to remember is that EXP, you and other leaders at EXP are that for us. And so don't get distracted by Fathom has now settled and this and that is going on in other companies. Don't let that distract you or confuse you. Mm-hmm. Stay focused on the tools and the expertise that EXP has given us. Stay compliant there. Know that process. Ask those questions within our own company. And I'm not trying to be like so EXP biased. I'm just saying that's the way that we stay safe. That's the guidance that we get, and then we can better serve our clients as a result. And I really do feel like it's easy to get sucked into the distraction of all of this, because there's a lot of storm going around and it's going to be happening for a while. But to trust that you and other leaders at EXP are grounded, you're watching, so we don't have to.
And it's one of those, if you have a question, it's like, hey, I read this headline, let me know. Because our team is actively going through all the headlines, and some of them are clickbait and some of them are meaningful. And so we're really trying to distill, and this is where I have to give it out to our marketing team. Our marketing team is focused very succinctly on how we best serve you and give you information that is helpful to build your business. Leo is on a very focused mission to be speaking not just about antitrust, but where the market is going. So you've probably seen that pivot here recently. Been doing a lot of interviews with, I think, NerdWallet and CNN and different things, talking about the real estate market, talking about home ownership, talking about the needs of buyers and sellers, because he was the number one agent in the world. He knows this, like he's been in your shoes. And so as a result, like we've got the best possible CEO right now to go out and speak on our behalf. And he's having all these conversations to focus on the consumer and where real estate is going. And that's what I would empower you all with.
Love it.
And yeah, Holly, thank you so much for being here, for sharing time and knowledge and expertise with us. It's just feels so good to know that we have people like you and Leo in leadership positions in this great company, and for just giving us some perspective and some focus. I love it. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for showing up. If you take nothing else, go to your state meetings, talk to your brokers, ask questions, know your forms, know the process, and you'll be good to go. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited. Holly's excited. If she says good things are coming in 25, let's blow it out of the park, community. Let's do it.
I love it.
Right on.
Holly, any parting shots before we play some music and get everyone out of here for the day?
No, man, go out and be awesome. That's all we know how to do. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Thank you, Holly.